Langley Christian School, boys and girls. I read you a story about Stretchy McHandsome, and that was Posha's story, but here's Posha again wanting to be in the story. I thought it would be good to have a story about a dog. We had a story about a cat, now a story about a dog. And then I thought of this story, Dogger, by Shirley Hughes, or there's another version called David and Dog by Shirley Hughes, and it's about a little boy, Stuffy. So I thought about the stuffies I have in my house. One of the stuffies is this little fox, and then this blanket also is really cozy. But when we have children, when our grandchildren come over, they want their own stuffies. They like this stuffy, but they also like to have their own stuffy and their own blanket. And this is a story that reminds us how precious our own stuffies are. So if you have a stuffy, you might want to run and get it right now. Press pause, and then when you come back, you can listen to this story with your stuffy. Dogger by Shirley Hughes. Once there was a soft brown toy called Dogger. One of his ears pointed upwards and the other flopped over. He was worn in places because he was quite old. He belonged to Dave. David was very fond of Dogger. He took him everywhere. Sometimes he gave him rides in a trolley. Sometimes he pulled him along on a lead made of string, like a real dog. And when it was cold, he wrapped him up in a bit of blanket. Now and again, Dave's mom said that Dogger was getting much too dirty. She showed David how to wash him in a bowl of soapy water, and then they hung him up by his tail to dry. David's brother Joe liked hard toys. He liked putting them in his mouth and biting on them because he was getting teeth. Dave's big sister Bella took 7 teddies to bed with her every night. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She had to sleep right up against the wall to keep herself from falling out. But David liked only Dogger. One afternoon, Dave and Mum set out to collect Bella from school. Mum took Joe in the pushchair, and David took Dogger. Next to the school gate where the mums waited was a playing field. Some men with ladders were putting up colorful flags. Mum said there was going to be a summer fair to make money, to buy things for school. Dave pushed Dogger up against the railings to show him what was going on. But just then, the children started to come out of school, and an ice cream van came around the corner playing a tune. Bella ran up with her satchel flying. Mum, can we have an ice cream? Mum gave her money for 2 cones. Joe didn't have a whole ice cream to himself because he was too dribbly. On the way home, Dave walked beside the pushchair, giving Joe licks of his ice cream. Joe kicked his feet about and shouted for more in between licks. At tea time, David was rather quiet. In the bath, he was even quieter. And at bedtime he said, "I want Dogger." But Dogger was nowhere to be found. Mum looked under the bed. Mum looked behind the cupboard. She searched in the kitchen and underneath the stairs. David watched anxiously through the banister. Joe watched through the bars of his cot. Bella joined in to look for Dogger. She turned her own toy box inside out in case he was there, but he wasn't. And when Dad came home, he looked for Dogger too. He searched in the shed and down the garden path with a torch, with a flashlight. But Dogger was quite lost. David was very sad when he went to bed. Bella kindly lent him one of her teddies to go to sleep with. It was not the same as Dogger. Dave kept waking up in the night and missing him. And you can see he's tossed Bella's teddy off the bed. The next day was Saturday. They all went to the school summer fair. The playing field was full of stalls and sideshows, all sorts of things, just like a fair that we might have here in Langley. There was a fancy dress parade. Oh my, look at that. All sorts of characters. There were sports with an egg and spoon race, a wheelbarrow race, and a father's race. I love that page. Bella was very good at races. She won the 3-legged race with her friend Barbara. "Wouldn't you like to go in for a race?" they asked Dave. but Dave didn't feel like racing. He was missing Dogger too much. Then another exciting thing happened to Bella. She won first prize in a raffle. It was a huge yellow teddy bear wearing a beautiful blue bow. He was almost as big as David. Dave didn't like that teddy at all. At that moment, he didn't like Bella much either, because she kept on winning things. He went off on his own to look at the stalls. One lady had a toy stall full of knitted ducks and cars and baby dolls in bonnets, and there at the back of the stall, behind a lot of other toys, was Dogger. He was wearing a ticket saying 5 pence, which is like 5 cents. There were a lot of people around the stall. Dave tried to explain to the lady that it was his Dogger who had got lost by mistake. But somehow it had been put in the stall, and she was not listening. He looked in his pocket. He only had 3 pence, and that wasn't enough. He ran to find Mom and Dad to ask them to buy Dogger back at once. Dave went everywhere in the crowd. He could not see Mom and Dad. He thought he was going to cry, but at last he found Bella by the cakes. When she heard about Dogger, she and Dave ran back to the toy stall as fast as they could. Something terrible had happened. Dogger had just been bought by a little girl, and she was already walking off with him. Dave began to cry. Bella ran after the little girl and tried to explain that Dogger really belonged to Dave, and could they please buy him back? But the little girl said no. She said she had bought Dogger with her own money, and she wanted him. She held on to him tightly. Dave cried, and then the little girl started to cry too, but out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Bella's big yellow teddy. She stopped crying, and she put out her hand to stroke the beautiful blue silk bow. Then Bella did something very kind. "Would you swap this teddy for my brother's dog then?" she asked. Right away the little girl stopped crying and began to smile. She held out Dogger to Dave and took that big yellow teddy instead, and went off with him in her arms. Then Dave smiled too. He hugged Dogger. He hugged Bella around the waist. "Thank you, Bella," he said. That night, Dave had Dogger in bed beside him. Bella was practicing somersaults. "Shall you miss that big teddy?" Dave asked her. "No," said Bella. "I didn't like him much, really. He was too big, and his eyes were too staring. Anyway, if I had another teddy in my bed, there wouldn't be room left for me." Good night, Dave. Good night, Bella. I love that story. I love how it has such a happy ending. And I hope you enjoyed it too. And I think Posh did.